Welcome, welcome, welcome to Planting Seeds with the Partnership. This is your host, Kayla Grigsby, and this is where we learn about all things partnership. We are diving into Durham's Partnership for Children, talking about the work that we do because there's many facets that go into the work. And today, I have Katie Starr joining me. Hey, Katie, how are you?
Hi, Kayla. I'm great. Very excited.
Good. I'm glad you're here. We work very closely together, and it's funny because I always give disclaimers when I'm talking to my coworkers. I'm like, "Hey, listeners, we do know each other. We are acquainted, but I think it is a good thing for people to hear how we all work together." So, Katie, introduce yourself. What is your role at the partnership?
Definitely. So my role at the partnership is I'm program coordinator of community initiatives.
Okay, so what does that mean for the average Joe?
Yes. So within that role, ensuring that kind of external programs align with the internal work of the partnership. So this means various things, being involved with programs that oversee literacy initiative, farm to early care and education work, advocacy work, able to support the Smart Start and the transition to kindergarten. So getting to work with a lot of external partners to make sure that our mission and our work aligns with the Durham community.
Awesome. Awesome. And we're going to get into some of those initiatives in a few, but I want to know what's your favorite part of your job? Like, what does your day to day look like, and what sticks out to you since you've been to the partnership?
Yeah. I'd say one favorite part of my job is that it is very community facing. So I'm able to work with a lot of different people in different sectors of early childhood and within like the public school system. So I think my favorite part is being able to see kind of what each organization or person kind of brings to this role perspective, and it's kind of like a puzzle piece on kind of how we work best together and what collaboration looks like, and it will always show up in different ways.
Right.
So average days vary from day to day, and I think that is a good part of the job where it never gets monotonous, which is really nice. An average day could be facilitating a community meeting and helping prepare that agenda, and making those meetings as collaborative, interactive as they can to really make sure everyone has a chance to share, and kind of guiding strategy on an initiative. Sometimes there's some program monitoring and evaluation just to make sure things are moving forward, materials are getting distributed, and also just kind of like internal meetings with colleagues just to making sure we're touching base on different projects that we're working on.
So I know you mentioned them a little bit earlier when you were introducing yourself, but can you touch again on what initiatives you work on and why they're important? And I know it may be a lot because you do work on a lot of initiatives, but I think people need to, hear about the intricacies of the different ones. So it's like you talked about transition to kindergarten and farm to ECE. And so I think sometimes we don't realize a lot of these tentacles are connected to the partnership. So I think if you let us know about those initiatives, that would be awesome for the listeners to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with I guess farm to early care and education. That's one that's definitely near and dear to my heart. So this is just ensuring so kind of the three components of farm to early care and education is local food purchasing, school gardens, and nutrition and food and agricultural curriculum. And so how all those components can get incorporated into early childhood education environments. And so I'm just very passionate about this because thinking that farming and food systems is such like a platform for also advancing like racial and social equity. And I find that just like it incorporates everything. And so we get to work with different partners at including different farmers, but different people at the Durham Department of Public Health, the Cooperative Extension, to really meet the providers where they are and see what works for them, like what best works for you to incorporate this into your early care and education environment. And so this has looked like in different ways, whether that's local food purchasing. We were just talking with some providers yesterday that have been purchasing food boxes for their families and their students. This also has looked like installing gardens at different centers or family childcare homes, and just using all these components and not only talking about food systems, but how it's incorporated into like math and science and regulating like social emotional development and just bonds in general, and it's just a whole new way to explore and develop for the little ones. So it's been very awesome to be able to work on this project and continue incorporating it into the work. And so that's a little bit on that one.
And that's really awesome, because I know the approach typically for both our early Head Start and our pre-K programs are to have a more hands-on, whatever the child is interested in approach. So I think that's gardening and making ways for that to happen at the actual centers is amazing. Because I know I don't have a green thumb, and maybe I would if I had started a little earlier and made those connections. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm still working on my green thumb, honestly. But I think connecting kids to the outside world and like very like culturally responsive ways, but I think it's really beautiful. I remember talking with one provider, and they were saying that they were having a taste test with tomatoes, and the one child was like, I don't want a tomato, like I do not like those. And the teacher was saying, do you like ketchup? And the kid was like, yes, absolutely. But had never made the connection that tomatoes and ketchup. So I think just little sweet things like that, just to connect kids to the earth and to their food, really creates wonderful relationships between those two components.
Agreed. Okay, so what are some other initiatives that you'd like to highlight?
I'll highlight our Campaign for Grade Level Reading initiative. So Durham's Partnership for Children is the backbone agency of Durham's Campaign for Grade Level Reading. And so this is a national initiative, and then there's about 13 local chapters all over North Carolina, and we are the Durham chapter. And so our mission is just to promote summer learning, school attendance, and parent empowerment around literacy, and ensuring that all kids are reading by 3rd grade. And so we're a collaboration of businesses, nonprofit, the counties, and most importantly, the parents, working on community initiatives to kind of ensure that work is being done. And so it's been amazing to be able to work with so many different partners on this, and just ensure that our communication is really aligned, and just understanding initiatives that the library is working on, that Book Harvest is working on, Reach Out and Read, which looks at literacy within pediatric offices. And so how do all of these unique organizations and individuals, how can this work align just to make sure any gaps are filled, or like capacity is also built somewhere in the community.
Awesome. And I think that's really cool, because I noticed that the partnership not only partners with, community organizations, but we also partner with parents on initiatives to, make sure that literacy is up to par, or how we can make a difference. And I think that's amazing. I think sometimes when you look at the partnership, you always think of one thing, like businesses partnering with businesses. But it's truly a all-around approach, and we want to partner with families. We want to partner with community organizations, businesses, like to make sure that children 0 to 5 are served and ready to succeed in school. So that's amazing to learn about those initiatives. And if you have any questions about them, you can always look on our website at dpfc.net. And so we're going to move along, because I know you and I work together on some advocacy stuff. We collaborate on those things. And so I want you to kind of touch on, because I don't want to beat a dead horse. I know that I'm technically the host, right? But I do want you to touch on some of the advocacy work we do together. And I guess I can kind of start the conversation in that realm. But advocacy in early education is super important, but I want to hear from your perspective why it's important, since you've been at the partnership, since we've been working together, which we started fairly close to each other. So I feel like our journey together on learning how we can advocate for children has been very close knit, and I appreciate the journey with you, and I hope we can continue. But how do you feel? Like, I mean, and this is, as raw as you can get, being PG, but how do you feel about advocacy in early education? Where do you feel like we may be lacking, and what have you seen so far on the things we've been working on?
Yeah. I think just advocacy is so important to systems change, to really showing that all people have the power to make a difference. And I think just so often the people in these prominent positions of power are very far from on the ground what is actually happening, the injustices that are happening, kind of things like that. And so advocacy is a way to have your story be told, have a way to say that this funding, this law, this policy affects our lives, like on the everyday. So how can our story, our narrative really fit into that? And so, and I think just everyone being able to see that they have they can play an active role in really affecting outcomes for their kids, for their families, for their entire community. So I'm trying to say that's why I find it important. And I think trying to think what the second part of your question was, the journey, just the general journey. Yeah, I think that the whole, and like you said, we've been on this journey together, but just following the budget process and following the stakeholders involved can get fuzzy, can get really confusing, especially for any average person who is working 2 jobs, has 3 kids. Like it's a process that is made to be hard, so people can actively engage. So I think what we've really tried to do is, how do we demystify this process? How do we make it accessible, really digestible for anyone to be excited and want to take part in it? And I think it's a beautiful process of just kind of like meeting by meeting, finding more community, building more momentum for folks to want to be involved, engaged. And I think my favorite things on the calls, our advocates and action calls that we've had, is just making connections, is answering any questions that we can, pointing them towards a resource that makes folks feel more empowered and more equipped to join with us. And I think that's kind of what we get excited about, is just building a movement, building a community of people who see themselves being active advocates, because we're all advocates, and so just supporting each other.
And I love what you said about demystifying the process. Like, that to me hits home, because I know when we started initially and, just kind of easing our way into what our roles were at the partnership and how we contribute. I'm the community awareness coordinator. You do programs and outreach within the community. And so a lot of our work will overlap with each other. So we were like, okay, how do we get involved with advocacy and what more can we do? And I remember vividly when you decided like, hey, can we meet on Zoom? You know, because we're middle of the pandemic in a panorama. And, you know, you say, hey, can we meet on Zoom and talk about how we can get more involved? And I was like, whoa, yeah, there is like another part of my job that I need to tap into a little more, because it's obviously it's a part of my role, but that's a part of what we're doing. Like, we can only provide these services at the partnership through advocacy and getting other people to understand how important early education is, how important the foundation before kindergarten through, you know, 12th grade is. I find a lot of times, you know, there's a lot of legislation that focuses on public school, which they still need the funding. It's not about give us this because we deserve it more than them, but it's more so we all collectively need to be brought up. It needs to be an equitable process for everybody. And I think that's what we're finding out is super important about Leandro, which is why we have to keep, you know, our we need to keep our hands to the fire when it comes to that. You know, but just like you said, learning the budgeting process, learning about, you know, the governor writing his budget, it going to the Senate, then going to the House, then going to joint, then going back to the governor to either approve or veto the bill. You know, these processes we learn in school, but you know, how often do we engage in the process, and how often do we continue to talk about these things so that people do feel like they're a part of the process? And so I've been loving, you know, our journey of finding out how we can make this information about things that are affecting the early education community. And even if you're not a teacher, if you're a family, you have to talk about how, you know, you need a shorter subsidy wait list. Like, we need more funding there so people can actually find daycare, need more slots within pre-K and daycare. So, you know, it's all interdependent within one another. And so, yeah, we have to keep talking about it. And so, of course, shameless plug, we have Advocates in Action on, we do it, the last Wednesday of every month. I'm getting my days mixed up. But we do it the last Wednesday of every month from 12:30 to 1 p.m. And this month, which when this airs, it'll be tomorrow. So tomorrow, join us because we're going to have Elaine Zuckerman. She's from North Carolina Early Education Coalition. She is phenomenal at breaking down legislative updates, budget, House, Senate, you know, anything that we need to know about what's been passed through the House. She's phenomenal at explaining that. She's made it very easy for me, and we're truly grateful to be able to, you know, whenever we need her, email her or, you know, ask her for a one-on-one. So we encourage you guys to register if you can, and make sure that you come in and listen, because she has valuable information and she always keeps us updated. So we wanted to share that resource with you all. So Katie, since working at the partnership, you know, you and I came in at an awkward time. We probably worked a good solid week in the office before the pandemic hit. And so how has the pandemic affected your work, do you feel? And, you know, what have you done to kind of work around that to make sure you can still serve the families and children that we serve?
Yes. Wow. Definitely some big pivots and flexibility and needing to be at the forefront. But I think just understanding, I think our whole agency has been able to adjust to a more kind of digital environment. So this has shown up in the meetings that we've had, but also in trainings directly with family, how those have also gone to a more virtual, to being online, whether it's transition to kindergarten webinar or trainings that we've had, how those have been in a virtual world, but also thinking about distributions. If we do have material distributions, how can we meet families where they are to make sure that they get the resources, especially for families who lack internet access or have barriers, language barriers. And so just understanding that things have shifted virtually, but also that how can we really have that equity lens and understanding that the virtual world hasn't worked for all folks. But I also think realizing just how much is happening all the time, in terms of just like the stress, whether it's economically, social stress of this pandemic. And so I think a big shift also is how support people to make sure their basic needs are met, whether that is food assistance, financial assistance, or just being able to show up how you are with kids with not feeling great. I think that's been a big pivot, is really seeing a whole person, and how to really support that. I think that's been something that's definitely shifted and affected our work at the partnership.
Right. I love that, because I think we of course have had to pivot, and I've talked about this on other episodes, like, you know, we've been super flexible, but I think due to our leadership, you know, Danielle always says, which is our executive director, she always says, give grace for this, you know, give space for grace. And so I totally agree with that. And I think that's how we've been able to sustain, because we all have that mindset of, you know what, I may not feel the best today. I may still be dealing with the same internet issues as the families, or, you know, so you can empathize. Therefore, you don't get frustrated, but you meet them where they're at. Because we're all in this together. Like literally, we are partnering with our families in whatever way that we can in order to help, you know, get to our goal, which is to make sure the children are ready, you know, for school. And so we're going to end on this note, and it's a very light note. But if you want to give us a favorite quote or some words of wisdom that always get you through or resonate with you, please share with us.
I would say, well, I want to give one shout out to just an author I really appreciate, and that's Adrienne Marie Brown. And they actually live in Durham, recently moved here.
Awesome.
And their work around kind of interdependence and kind of working as like community organizers, their brilliance has really been inspirational to me, and the way they pull on nature is just really inspirational. So I just wanted to give that quote, because not the quote, but shout out to that author who's really inspirational. But I think a quote that always gets me, it's actually on my desk, so I'm looking at it, but it says, if you have come here to help me, you're wasting your time, but if you've come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And that always just really inspires me, because I think in our work, like, just understanding that interdependence of just how can we, like, we've seen it through the pandemic, through everything, we're all so interconnected, so how can we really see that within each other, and work together on things, which is not always easy, but I think this quote always kind of grounds me and inspires me to remember that. So
awesome. And Katie, if someone needed to contact you for any reason, would you leave us your email, please?
Yes, my email is Katie, Katie, at DPFC.net.
Awesome. So thank you so much for chatting with me and giving us all the details about your initiatives that you work on, who you collaborate with, talking about some advocacy work. We really appreciate everything that you do and what you contribute to the partnership. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Well, thank you for chatting with me. It's such an honor to be able to work together and be doing this together, and you were fantastic. So
thank you.
Just really appreciate you.
And if anyone has any feedback on planting seeds with the partnership, you have any good ideas that you'd like us to chat about, or any burning topics that you want us to talk about, please feel free to drop a comment below this video, or you can email me at Kayla, Kayla at dpfc.net, and visit our website at www.dpfc.net to look at any of our initiatives, what we have going on in our programs, and we will talk to you guys next time. Thank you.